Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Jeff Heilman Project podcast, your go-to podcast for the systemization of success in both family and business. It feels like to me that it's been a while that we've been in the booth.
Has it been a week?
And my most important question is, how have you been feeling? Are you feeling any better?
For a guy who claims he doesn't wobble, I've been wobbling a ton.
Yes, if any one of you have ever suffered really from vertigo, unfortunately, our dear Jeff has had vertigo for a few days, but we're doing some modifications.
This is the vertigo episode.
We're doing some modifications on diet, and things seem to be improving. So I'm glad that you're back in the booth. Glad that you're back with us.
Thank you.
And you just never cease to amaze me at what a project you really are.
I am a piece of work, as they say.
And speaking of being pieces of work, today on today's episode, we're going to be talking about investing. And as you know, our number one thing to invest in from the Jeff Heilman Project podcast post episodes has always been to invest in yourself first. And so before we even go into the what we do or how we approach financial investing, I think that we should talk about investing in self and what does investing in self mean? Where, honey, do you think the desire to begin investing into yourself even came from? Because not everybody, a lot of people, they'll go to college, they'll go to high school, whatever, they'll finish being required to read, and then that's it. No more reading ever moving forward. You and I have not had that approach as we've intentionally put our mission for personal growth as like one of the top factors that runs our lives. But where did that come from for you?
It came accidentally, first of all. I got involved in a multi-level business when I was a teenager. I'd actually been to a bunch of meetings for a bunch of different multi-levels.
Water filters, vacuums.
Water filters, vitamins, makeup, vacuums. I mean, it was...
You would have been good in the makeup one.
What's the come put the makeup? There's a phrase for it on Instagram. Come get ready with me, or come.
Oh, yeah. Come get ready with me.
Come get ready with me.
That's a thing.
Yeah. You want to talk about how to sell makeup? That seems to be the way to do it these days. But in the 80s, before the internet webs, social media and AI, we just had door-to-door, and we had multi-level direct selling, and we had parties and, sell vitamins and stuff. So the multi-level business, which we don't talk about it that much. Obviously, there's some social ramifications to that if you want to remain employed and have friends. It's the opposite of how to lose friends and be influenced by poverty if you're just getting started. But the multi-level business itself, the direct selling business, really worked exceptionally well for a handful of guys. So multi-level in the 1950s, 1960s was basically Nutrilite Vitamins, Rich DeVos, Jay Van Andel. And then in the 60s, I think, was Mary Kay. And that was it. And
Fuller Brush also.
Fuller Brush,
at some point.
Fuller Brush also, that's right.
Hairbrushes door to door.
And then,
for some reason stands out to me.
In the 70s and 80s, there was Melaleuca and a bunch of others that saw that this model worked. A distributor might make $20,000 or $30,000 a year, part-time job, keep your wife, from having to go get a job if she's got little kids at home, that kind of thing. But then in the 70s and 80s, there were a couple of guys that started realizing, hey, if we merchandise personal growth books and tapes and seminars and have functions and things, not only does it keep your group together, because the biggest problem with multi-level is loss of distributors and sales through attrition. Just people lose interest, or they don't have something to be connected to. They realize that if they start moving books and tapes and seminars into their organizations, the organizations stick together and they grow personally, and then they become super productive. And so, when I got in the multi-level business, in the Amway business in, I want to say 93 or 94, that was already in full swing. And so it was just assumed that if you were serious about building your business, you would get on a book and tape program. And it was assumed and kind of gently, and sometimes not so gently, nudged that this is what you're going to do. You're going to take the money you're spending on vitamins and makeup, skincare, and you're going to add to that, $30 or $40 a month of books and tapes. And so that's how it started.
And I think that it was important aspect of that business because it was more like a university. It was like a trade school, if you will, for people who aren't entrepreneurs to learn how to become entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
So they were like all the manuals.
100%. That's actually, I never thought about it that way, but it was actually a correspondence course trade school for entrepreneurship, direct selling, person-to-person selling, organization building, and leadership. And those were the skills that you needed to build a large organization. And with those skills, I watched not necessarily friends of mine, but people that I knew in the organization build organizations of 30 and 40,000 people. And by their 5th or 6th year in the organization, they were making $1 million a month. And when you start talking about making $1 million a month, and I mean, $1 million a month for an Instagram influencer today is not common for sure, but it's not asinine. But if you're talking about $1 million a month in the 80s, I mean, that's like $10 million a month. And to have somebody in their 30s making the equivalent of $100 million a year in a multi-level business they run out of their garage and do a seminar once a month, that just boggles the mind. So I started thinking about that, and they all pointed to the same thing. And I asked them, what was the secret? And they said, the secret was the system. Follow the process, read the books, listen to the tapes, and go to the functions. And you'll grow as a person. And so I start to see this connective tissue, this fascia between people who did really well in the business. And then you also have some people get in the business, and in 90 days, they're making $100,000 a year. Other people, like me, was in the business for probably 6 or 8 years before I made my first $2,000 or $3,000 a month. And you sit there and you're like, well, what's wrong with you, Jeff? I don't remember the guy's name, but I remember where I was. It was the first function I ever went to. And I sat down with a guy who was in his late 20s, and he's touring the world, making $300,000 a year in Amway. And I asked him, what the hell? Like, you were in this business 6 months and you became a direct distributor in the Amway business. And now you're making $300,000 a year. You haven't even turned 30 yet. You got a beautiful wife. You travel around the world. You live in a massive house. You got a watch that costs more than all my parents' cars put together. What's the secret? Like, what are people missing? And he said, personal growth. And so this guy was somebody I could relate to. He's maybe 6 or 7 years older than me, but he was stratospherically above me in financial capacity and production. And he said that it was personal development that was the big blocker for the capacity for any entrepreneur. So that's when the light bulb went off for me. And I was like, okay, now this is a podcast about investing, but we're talking about the first, and the person that I've seen talk about this the best is Invest Diva on Instagram. She's fantastic. She's worth $17 or $18 million. She was broke 6 or 7 years ago, but she started teaching this concept of triple compounding. And so triple compounding is, number one, invest in yourself. And I mean, invest in yourself forever. Like, this is not a invest in yourself until it works and then you can stop growing. I don't agree with that at all. But invest in yourself, number one. The second compounding is get a side hustle. Figure out some way to create cash flow outside of your W-2 job. And then number three, take that money and invest it into stocks, and then eventually with leverage, real estate. That's how you become very, very wealthy. You have businesses that create cash flow. Anybody that's really wealthy, they have some basic business that serves an insurance need or a supplement need or a food need, some basic human need. And then they take the cash flow that spins off of that and they invest it into other businesses, real estate, stocks, etc. But knowing how to do that all starts with that first investment in yourself.
Considering this podcast is a dual point of view podcast, he said, she said, family, business, whatever you want to, however you want to call it. Whereas you were drawn to personal growth via business and being in a trade school, if you will, for entrepreneurship. I really feel like my desire and my ambition to grow personally and dedicate my life toward reading books that were autobiographical or biographical
Long word, by the way,
was really from watching my grandma and seeing how much of a reader she was, And being able to see somebody, a woman from the product of the 50s, who, for all intents and purposes, had been taught that your whole purpose on life is to be a wife and to have a child, it's to have children and to be, subjugated and in the home, and not be resentful about that. But instead of being resentful about being a stay-at-home mom who raised her children, was very grateful and thankful for the opportunity. But in her spare time was always reading about, if she wanted to know how to build a bookcase, we had woodworking books growing up, we had craft books growing up, we had art books growing up.
National Geographic subscription for 45 years.
We had any book that because there was no internet, any book, any subject that she was interested in or wanted to know more about, she would go to the library, check out the books, or she would buy the books. So I'd like to encourage any one of you out there who might not have necessarily been inspired to go to personal growth because of a business or because you just have to figure out how to make more money. But when you do decide to dedicate to investing in personal growth and just finding out how things tick, how things work, your children are watching what you're doing and the type of books you're bringing home. And do you have a bookcase? And are there books on the bookcase? Have you read those books from the bookcase? And they are picking up from you your desire to want to learn, and it helps to foster within them a desire to learn, as it did myself. Just this week, I was actually thinking about the scripture that says, his yoke is easy and his burden is light. And I think that it's applicable to this, because if in the spiritual aspect, we are all desiring to have light yokes, easy burdens, if making billions in your future would be heavy or burdensome, there will be a pause, if you will, or maybe it'll take longer because there's no desire for us to be burdened or for us to be heavy laden. But when you dedicate toward personal growth, it alleviates burden. It lightens up the yoke of whatever it is that where you're trying to go. So the more that you read, you're actually relieving the burden off of yourself, so that as you get closer and closer to your goals, it's actually attainable. It's actually possible. But if you are dreaming and desiring to be a billionaire one day, and you never pick up a book on what it takes to become a billionaire, well, that's a heavy burden, and it's just never going to come your way. So the more that you read, the more that you dedicate to investing in learning and educating yourself and alleviating the pressure because things start making sense and you're getting wisdom, then guess what? $100,000 comes a little more naturally. $1 million comes a little more naturally. $1 billion, that might even be possible now because of all of the personal growth, all of the books that you've read. And now it becomes something believable. And once it becomes believable, it becomes attainable.
If we could look at a simple KPI, I mentioned this interview in the past, but not from this point of view. 2007, there was a magazine being published by Darren Hardy, who's since, I think he handed it over to somebody else, but Success Magazine, which originally started with W. Clement Stone and Napoleon Hill, and then it was later published by the 62 Principles guy,
Jack
Canfield. And then Darren Hardy took over the publication of it, and it effectively gave him access to some of the greatest entrepreneurs, business owners, athletes, entertainers in the world. And he did an interview with Tony Hawk in 2007. It was the title page, and it came out with a CD, DVD that you could stick in your DVD player, CD player in your car, and listen to the interview, or you could read it in the magazine. And in that, I heard Tony Hawk talk about the KPI, key performance indicator, for his life and business, which is cool people, cool projects. He had gotten himself to a point to where if somebody wanted him to sponsor and work on getting legislation passed in a town or permits for a skate park, he could do that. Or if he was kind of done with brand deals and shoes, he had those already kind of locked in, video games and all that stuff, which he said the video games is what just sent him into the $100 million net worth. That was insane for him. the licensing deals in video games. But he got to a point where he could pick the projects that you want to work on. Look, my goal is not to not work. Somebody was asking me about this earlier. My goal is not to not work. It's to be able to have total autonomy in choosing the projects that I work on and the people that I do it with. That's freedom, to pick when I work, where I work, how I work, what I work on, who I work with, how much I work, how much I get paid for the work, when I do it, when I don't do it, physically where I am, how I'm doing it. I want autonomy. I don't want to pretend. And that's been, some of the trouble in corporate life is I haven't done as good a job pretending to believe in people that were not good at anything, but happen to be in leadership positions. And when they're not good and I am good, or at least I think I'm good, and I have a direction and I want to go forward with it, but I have to drag along some poor soul who happens to be in leadership above me because they can't see how to get out of their way and my way along with it so that I can get back to printing money, which is what they hired me to do. That gets frustrating after time. So when we look at investing, ultimately what you want is you want to be able to work on cool projects with cool people. That's the KPI. But in order to do that, as I posted on LinkedIn not too long ago, the famous quote from CNN, Jewish guy with the suspenders. I can see his face. Larry King. Larry King live. Norm Macdonald was fired from Saturday Night Live, and Larry King says to him, yeah, but Norm, they own the cameras. So ultimately what you want from an investing standpoint is you want to own the cameras. And the crazy thing about digital and social media marketing and Instagram and influencers is everybody owns their own camera now. It's just getting the traffic. And so part number one for Tony Hawk, if you want to get to the point where you can work on cool people with cool projects, you're going to need influence. And so influence could be FU money. It could be a big network. It could be a brand. It could be a following. It could be a mission that you're on. It could be raised capital. But at the end of the day, you've got to figure out a way to own the cameras. And so if we work backwards from owning the cameras, with the cameras being stocks, real estate, brand deals, licensing agreements, Instagram followings, we work backwards from that and we get into a side hustle, which is something that you can do like this podcast. We've never been paid on this podcast before. It doesn't mean we won't. It's not really the goal. It's part of our overall. The goal is not to make money from a podcast. Your goal is not necessarily to make money from posting on social media. Make the goal of making money be the job of your business, whatever your business is that you're running. And in order to have a business, you need an offer and you need traffic. So this is part of creating the brand, which creates the traffic. It creates trust, all those things. And over the last 2 years, I've been being introduced as Jeff Heilman from the Jeff Heilman Project podcast, which, we're not making any money from it, but we have 150 episodes and thousands of hours watched of reels, from 5 reels a day being posted. So if we look at triple compounding of what does investing actually mean, number one, invest in yourself. And that is a book and audio and video program of some kind.
I'm currently reading 4 books right now.
What are you reading right now?
I am reading, we are together reading
Smith Wigglesworth. What's the name of that
Anointing,
book?
Walking in the
Anointing by Smith Wigglesworth. Yep.
I'm reading The Scarsdale Diet, which is a book out of the 70s, and I'm getting a lot of that from that. And The Whole Armor of God from Priscilla Shirer, which is a fantastic study. But the final book that I picked up off the shelf, because I am 49, going to be 50 in January of next year, is Charles Schwab wrote a book called So You're 50, Now What?
Nice.
And it's the entire premise is if you've never invested $1 by the time that you're 50, what do you do? And I really have found in his book it to be extremely encouraging because he says it's never too late. He walks through, after reading a few years ago, I read Tony Robbins' Mastering the Money Game. And if you get through the first half of that, you're overwhelmed with, oh my gosh, with trading in nanoseconds, how are we ever going to? So that one is a lot. And he even says that he came out of basically writing retirement to put that book together. And it is a Bible of sorts of like everything that he's ever learned and all the people he's ever learned. So that's a whole thing to eat. But this book, So You're 50 Now What, has been actually very encouraging because he's saying it's not too late. He goes through and he talks about how compounding interest and how when you do invest in the stock market that, you just let it sit and you just go. And so as piquing my interest, I will say that this has been the first year and it's very simple. If any of you are beyond and you're already focused on personal growth, you've committed to reading a book a month, a book every 2 months, get a couple in a year. You just go on Charles Schwab app. There's a Charles Schwab app that you can download for your phone. And it's very easy. You just link up your bank account and you can make a transfer from your bank account to your Charles Schwab account. And then once it's there, you can start buying stock. You can invest in the S&P. I really do like how the book sets you up to recognize that any amount is good and any amount can benefit you in the future. And what I really do like about the way that the app is actually set up is that if you see a stock, if you have $40, you could put $40 in. Maybe you make a weekly goal of putting $10 in. You can put $40 in. And if you see a stock that you're interested in, I think Yelp was at like $23 the other day. Let's say you buy one share of Yelp at 23 and then one share of something else. And then you have a remainder of, let's say you've got $6 left. Well, $6 isn't enough to buy another share of some other stock, but you can take that $6.25 or whatever, and you can put it in the S&P because the S&P will take any dollar amount. You could put $2. You could put 25 cents in the S&P. You don't have to have a share. So you've got your opportunity to zero out your Schwab account that you've transferred money into, and you could zero it out once a week. You could have S&P growing. You could have the stocks that you're interested in watching growing. It's a very easy, very simple way of doing some form of investment in stocks if that's something that you're interested in. Not everyone is interested in stocks. I happen to have been raised, in addition to my grandma learning how to read, our family bought stocks, they bought real estate. It's interesting to me. It's fun to watch it. I do not get attached to watching it go up or down. I've made a commitment this year that anything that I purchase, it's a buy only year for me. I am not interested in selling anything. And so I don't even hardly watch it. I just continue to keep putting some money into it. Like if I'm going to spend $20 on a Starbucks, I could certainly put $20 to buy into my investment account.
Absolutely. And the fact that we're even talking about this is a function of personal development because you have started reading books about investing.
Yes.
And you have, your parents have talked with you and trained you about it. Your dad was CEO of a public company. Your grandfather was an executive at Lockheed. Your mom was, at Apple
has
at a
purchased
really,
quite
really
a few
good
stock
time
over the years.
And so there's some assets there, and it's not necessarily life changing, but it shows over a period of decades what happens if you save and invest and create, and that is effectively a side hustle, right?
Yeah.
Because it is something for extra income. So let's talk about WinStack as it relates to investing, because WinStack is our portfolio. It's our program, which is based on years of experience, but also validated by ChatGPT, validated by the U.S. Navy SEALs. You have leading and trailing indicators for this investment of WinStack. Number one starts with identity. That's who are you? Going from the person who needs to invest to the person who invests in your mindset. When you shift and you say, I am the kind of person who gets a yield on my time and effort and energy, that in itself starts a whole downstream series of events. Secondly, the best thing that you can do is invest in yourself, but you cannot invest in yourself if you are not in state, which is, are you physically healthy? If you can take money that you could invest or put it into getting over a disease, I would pick getting over the disease. I would take the medicine. Put the $75 into antibiotics and get over tuberculosis. Right?
Yes.
You'll live long enough to be in a peak performance state. So first thing is identity. Who are you? I'm the kind of person who invests. Second thing is the peak performance state, or ideal performance state, IPS, ideal performance state. That is physically getting the rest that you need, hygiene, stretching, hydration, meditation, exercise, eating properly, protecting yourself from disease. So identity is first, then state. Once you know who you are and what you're doing, and you're physically free from maladies, then you get into the biggest constraint. And the biggest constraint for us for investing has been basically just lifestyle, right? Because we spent, millions of dollars on stupid stuff while we were trying to take the edge off of working insanely hard, trying to figure out how to make money. The last couple of years, we've gotten better about it, but we've also carved out in the beginning. We had all these kids. We had a house that needed to get bigger every couple of years. We needed cars that needed to get bigger or replaced because of the junkers that we had before every couple of years. It's only been the last couple of years that we've had enough money to where we could start putting extra stuff aside. And then we've dealt with job losses and lawsuits and legal problems and tax problems and debt problems, basically because of overconsumption, but also because our family is huge. So it's taken us a little while longer to get into the momentum of saying, okay, now there's some things that we need to invest in. But I invested in a business. We had we invested in ourselves, books and tapes, and then the side hustle, which was, multi-level business in the beginning. And then I ran a commercial janitorial business, and then a commercial painting business, and then a direct selling company. And then I did speaking engagements, and then I did consulting, and then I did project management. And then I started my own startup company that failed. So
professional golf.
Yeah, there was 10 years of financial catastrophe in a nutshell, because I thought I could make it as a professional athlete, traveling on tour and get into my own thing. But in the macro of it, it's still an investment in yourself. So we never really got off of step one of investing in ourselves. And let me tell you, folks, there are some people who never even start investing in themselves until they're in their 40s or 50s or 60s. We started investing in ourselves through a book and tape program when I was a teenager. You were 16. I was 19 when I got involved in the multi-level business. And you were 17, I think, maybe. So we started investing in ourselves, and it took me about 30 years of investing in myself to get to an understanding that you can't invest extra money if you spend it all eating out. You keep investing in yourself regardless of how much money you have. You keep buying books. You keep going to museums. You keep stretching your imagination. You keep looking and expanding your thinking, and eventually it will take root. And invest in yourself, number one. Number two, invest in a side hustle. Figure out a way to make an extra $20,000 or $30,000 a month, or $20,000 or $30,000 a year, through digital and social media marketing, consulting, coaching, online products, affiliate programs, newsletters, speaking engagements, podcasts, whatever your side hustle is, because that will absolutely help you increase your income if you're in a job that's pretty steady. My job in commission sales has been really high, really low. And so we've had to figure out, can't really live on the base. How do we live on the base with 9 people in Silicon Valley? That's been difficult. But then you get the big commission checks, and then you take that and you pay off credit cards and go on vacation and have some extra money to invest in things like side hustles, etc. But eventually, if you keep investing in yourself, you will come up with ideas. If you take those ideas and you come up with one offer designed for one customer avatar, and you sell that until you get to $1 million in sales, you'll create extra cash flow, which then can be turned into stocks and real estate and those types of things. So Jessica's interested in stocks and real estates, so she's focusing her effort and energy on that. It would be impossible for me to care less about real estate and stocks right now, because I'm focused on building my side hustle business and, working my 80-hour-a-week job. But for her to do that because it's personal growth and it's interesting, and she can carve out some money and create that as her side hustle, I can do my side hustle through posting on Instagram, newsletters, speaking engagements, coaching, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter what the avenue is that you're creating that extra income. What matters is that you're growing as a human being, that you're following, forget about your passion. I would say follow your curiosity, because it's Jessica's curiosity that fuels her to work at studying investing in stocks and real estate. It's my curiosity about social media and Instagram and what the new features are and how to post and how to do captions and where to set stuff and talking into the camera, all that stuff, this podcast, these are the digital world of software and mobile computing and internet and AI is interesting to me. I'm curious about it, and it gives me that dopamine hook that I need in order to keep doing the work. People say, well, I thought this was a podcast about investing. I'm talking about investing because most people that listen to this aren't making an extra $300,000 or $400,000 a year of income to invest. And if you're taking $2,400 a year and putting it in the stock market, that is not going to get you the yield that personal growth times a side hustle is going to get you. Stocks and real estates are typically things that when you don't have to, Jessica doesn't have to work. She's able to take her time and freedom and do whatever she wants to do with it. So now that she's been freed up financially for 30 years, she can do whatever she wants to do. If you're not in a situation where you're freed up to do whatever you want to do with your free time, then start with this process of triple compounding. Go listen to Invest Diva. Yeah. And she talks about this process of personal growth plus side hustle and then stocks and real estate once you don't have to work anymore. And you can literally transform your life.
Parents, if I can talk to you for a minute. If you have a child who you would like to motivate and encourage to begin reading, because I know so many parents who just would love to see their children excited about reading or starting to read books, I would encourage you to sit down with them and watch this podcast, because we're working diligently to motivate not only you to pick up some books, but to motivate anyone who's listening to attempt to begin to pique their curiosity and go out and get the resources in order to gain wisdom in that. It's like the inner city. If you are from the inner city, and you have the same teachers over and over and over again, many of the inner city children will drop out, and they will just end up not living very encouraging lives. But when you have a special teacher who has been called into the inner city and brings with them plant life, and in this example, that plant life that they bring into the inner city is something that the children have never seen before. They've never been exposed to it before. It's beautiful. It's growing. It's thriving. That little moment of experiencing a world outside of their own is what actually begins to pique their curiosity and begins to motivate them that it could be different, that what the situation that they're in at the moment doesn't have to remain the same. And so what books are those teachers. Books are likened unto the teachers coming into a world that has become desperate, it's become boring, it's become mundane, it's become depressing. And what these books do, what the types of books that we're talking about do, the kind that are motivating, encouraging, uplifting, piquing your curiosity, getting you excited to want to learn something new, are like the plant life coming into an inner city world in which things have always remained the same. And so we cannot emphasize more the importance of what it means to go to your library, go to the bookstore, go to Barnes and Noble, go touch a book, look at the spine of it, pick it up, open it, smell it, do what you can do in order to expose yourself to a world outside of the one that you are currently in. And so if you want to get to where you do not want to drop out of life, if you want to get to where you can encourage your teenager or your young adult or someone who you know is stuck to not drop out of the book of life, not drop out of the classroom of life, then go get a cup of coffee. Go on a book date. We love book dates. Yeah. Go to a refurbished bookstore. Go to sit and scroll literally through books on any subject that you could think of that might be encouraging or inspiring. Because what we want people to see and experience, taste and touch a world that they've never even been exposed to before. And that is investing in yourself, which is the first priority.
I saw something on LinkedIn the other day. You ever notice how they never sponsor football or baseball players for Rolex, specifically football players? It's never. It's always tennis and golf. And why is that?
And yachting.
And yachting.
Boats, like beautiful wooden boats.
Because Rolex associates their brand with success and winning and wealth and people of influence and power. And, I've got friends who are professional baseball players, professional football players, and they make F tons of money. But football and baseball as a sport, as an entertainment, caters to poor people. And that's why Rolex has nothing to do with them. They have to do with the rich sports like polo, like tennis, like golf, like cricket, like yachting, boats, right? Regattas. That's a fancy name for a boat race, right? Regatta. And so there's a reason why Rolex doesn't associate itself with poverty. They associate itself with timekeeping, like Monaco racing and Grand Prix and wealth and yachts and billions of dollars. When I look at WinStack, I just want to come full circle to what we were talking about earlier on WinStack. So there's leading indicators and trailing. The leading indicators for WinStack is your identity. You go from I'm a person who needs to invest to I'm a person who always invests, starting with WinStack, even if that includes going down $2 at Savers and you get yourself a Jim Collins book like Good to Great or Built to Last. That is an investment. You're taking that $2 that's worth half of a Diet Coke and you're moving it into your library, which becomes a permanent asset and a wealth reserve in your own book repository. That's identity. Next is the ideal peak performance state, which has to do with health. When somebody says, hey, I'm going to the gym, they are investing in themselves. They are doing what it takes to be able to create the kind of fitness and the kind of energy that they need to go and move their life forward. Number 3 is constraint theory. And we've talked about that on other podcasts. I could talk about constraint theory till I'm blue in the face. It transformed my entire existence on this planet because it got me away from to-do lists and all this other bullshit that people waste their time on and got me focused on moving the biggest blocker, even if that blocker takes days, weeks, or in this case with current contracts I'm working on, months of effort. And I'm pushing off taxes, I'm pushing off bills, I'm pushing off all these other things. This is the one constraint that opens up everything else, is constraint theory. When you do that and you have systems that automate, for example, this podcast is very automated. I sit down for 45 minutes a week, I'm done. Andrew does all of the filming, all the lighting, all the editing, all the posting, all the captioning, all the inviting, all of the scheduling, all of everything. That's automated. Andrew does that for us as part of his contribution to the family. We pay him a little bit for it, but that he represents the system. So we have identity. We are the people who do podcasts. Peak performance state, brush my teeth, brush my hair, take shower, shave, go to the gym, stay fit, get over vertigo. That's your ideal peak performance state. Biggest constraint, podcast needs to ship. It's part of the branding. Move the needle on that. Systematized, delegate it, in this case, to Andrew with all the tools. We've invested thousands and thousands of dollars in tools to make this job easier for him. And then what that does is it makes intensity, which was the only tool I had in 1996 when I got married to Jessica. The only tool I had was intensity. It makes intensity almost unnecessary. And you can start going slow through life and taking your time and being present and doubling and tripling down on being grateful for your life. That's the leading indicators. Now, the trailing indicators, which is where we get into investing, the trailing indicators for WinStack are number 1, cash flow. We have produced millions and millions of dollars of cash flow. Now, we've done a W-2 and we've had multiple businesses fail and take us out financially, and we've lost millions of dollars in that. And I've also made some decisions not to go to work for some companies that would have put millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars in my bank account. But cash flow is the main engine, because if you can't pay your bills, you don't have money to invest. If you can pay your bills and you have extra, you're silly if you don't invest. The leverage is cash flow. Cash flow then becomes capital if it's extra over and above what you need to run your household. Capital invested properly creates freedom, and then freedom creates creativity. And if you'll notice that creativity, that downstream creativity, or the top of the pyramid, if you're working from the foundation level up, is actually the same thing that Maslow talks about in the hierarchy of needs with regard to both the appreciation of aesthetics, beauty, art, which we've invested lots and lots of money into art and cars and clothes and things, to furniture to improve our lives. A lot of the money that we've spent has been in that aesthetic reach. but then also self-actualization, which is being, seeing, doing, imagining, and living and manifesting out the life the way that you want to have it. So if you want to live the life the way you want to have it, it all starts with identity upstream at the leading indicator for Winstack.
And as always, if you'd like to see some of the templates that we've put together, we will have them on the website at thejeffheilmanproject.com. Thanks to Andrew posting our templates and our systems that we so joyfully get to share with you. If you have enjoyed today's podcast, please go on YouTube if you're listening audibly and share it with your friends. Send it on out through people do emails, text it, whatever. Like, share, subscribe, and continue to spread the message of hope that there is a couple here ready to share with you the systems that we have come up with over the last 30 years of being married and as parents of 7 homeschooled children.
The library wall.
Who are amazing. I love you, Andrew, Jeffrey, Joseph, Andrew, all
Jeffrey,
of
Joseph,
kids.
Andrew, Matto, Ashi, Teddy, Ness.
And the dogs and the cats, too.
Dogs and cats.
God bless you guys, and see you next time on the Jeff Heilman Project. Bye-bye.
Thanks.